D. Leo Daniels, born February 25th, 1923 in Bremen, and fell October 9th, 1943 at the Dnieper Bend as part of the Battle of the Dnieper. He was a Gefreiter and died in Zaporizhia, Ukraine. Wilhelm Dirks, born August 31st, 1919 in Cleve, and fell September 10th, 1939 in Nerev. Wilhelm was a Schütze in the 6th Company of Infantry Regiment 3, Infantry Division 21. According to his casualty record, he was killed by an artillery shot to the back on September 9th, not September 10th. At the time, his regiment was crossing the Nerev River near Novograd while assaulting Lomza Fortress. He is buried in the Malovka Military Cemetery, Block D, Grave 9. Heinrich Dirksen, born September 6, 1905 in Cleve, and fell December 17, 1943. Heinrich was a Gefreiter in the 2nd Company of Landschütze Battalion 468. He was killed by a perforating gunshot wound to the chest near Byerotzino, Belarus. Anton Deventer, born June 27, 1922 in Cleve, and fell August 27, 1942 in the East. Anton was a Schütze in the 11th Company of Infantry Regiment 60, motorized, of the 16th Infantry Division. His cause of death is listed only as hit, and he was killed 18 kilometers east of Ulan-Erga, Russia. Anton's fellow factory worker, Jacob Arnst, also served in Infantry Regiment 60 as an Obergefreiter in the 1st Company. He was killed a little over a month before Anton on July 2, 1942, by a gunshot wound to the head near Maximovka. Josef Delekis, born April 17, 1907 in Mulheim, and fell December 16, 1944 in the Eifel. Josef was an Unteroffizier and is buried in the Bitburg Komoshohe Cemetery. Given the time and location of his death, it looks like Josef was killed on the first day of the Ardennes offensive. Bernhard Dorr, born January 7, 1923 in Gok, and fell January 5, 1944 by Kirovograd. Bernhard was a Gefreiter in the Luftwaffe and was killed in the area around Kirovograd. Heinrich Dorsen, born December 24, 1907 in Cleve, and fell in 1946. Johann Dorsen, born July 20, 1902 in Cleve, and died in captivity on May 8, 1945, the day the war ended. Johann is listed as having died in Sinzig, which was the site of a POW camp at the end of the war, one of several camps known as the Rhine-Wiesenlagers. The conditions of the camps were not good, and it is estimated that 3,000 to 10,000 German POWs died there from lack of shelter and resources. Theodor Dorsen, born November 20th, 1909 in Cleve, and fell October 20th, 1944 in Bulgaria. Theodor was an Unteroffizier and was killed in Osijek, Croatia. Wilhelm Dorsen, born June 13, 1898 in Cleve, and fell in March of 1945. Volksbund notes that he was an Unteroffizier and was killed on March 31, 1945. He is buried in the Fulda Maberzel Cemetery in Germany. Johann Duif, born March 22, 1922 in Neutroden, and fell on November 25, 1942 in the East. Johann was a Gefreiter in the 4th Company, Grenadier Regiment 167 of the 86th Infantry Division. He was killed by a direct hit to his head in Zomoshe, near Reshev. Johann's fellow factory worker, Hermann Bartels, served in the same division as a grenadier in the 1st Company of Grenadier Regiment 216. He was killed the day after Johann on November 26th, near Nivye, by a headshot. Johann van Dyck, born October 7th, 1925 in Rindern, and fell January 30th, 1944 in the East. E. Wilhelm von Eck, born June 22nd, 1919 in Hau, fell January 12th, 1943, south of Latagasi. Wilhelm was a Gefreiter in the 13th Company of Grenadier Regiment 328, Infantry Division 227. He was killed by a shrapnel wound near Schlüsselburg, Russia. Schlüsselburg has been the site of a fortress since 1323, and a group of 350 Soviet soldiers occupied the position shortly before the town was taken by the Germans in September of 1941. While the fort was nearly destroyed during the siege, the defenders managed to hold on until Operation Iskra pushed the Germans out of the area on January 18, 1943. Based on Wilhelm's date of death, he was killed shortly before the relief of the fortress took place. One of Wilhelm's fellow workers, Grenadier Gerhard Bruckmann, would be killed by a gunshot wound to the chest while serving with the same division, Company 8, Grenadier Regiment 366, in January of 1944. Lord, now you let your servant go in peace, as you said, for my eyes have seen your salvation. Franz von Eggeren, born December 3, 1874, in Kronenberg, and fell October 19, 1944, during an air raid. Erich von Elst, born May 20, 1925, in Rindern, and fell July 24, 1944, at the Memel. Erich was a student in the 4th Company of Herr Unteroffiziers School, Potsdam. He had his leg torn off by a bomb during an air raid, and is buried in Kaunas, Lithuania. Based off the date of his death, he must have been somewhere near Kaunas as part of his officer school training, when he was killed during an air raid as part of Operation Migration. Heinrich von Endern, born March 19, 1897 in Cleve, and fell October 31, 1942, in a Russian hospital. Heinrich was an Unteroffizier in Bau Battalion 52. Prior to the war, this construction battalion was an RAD unit and was deployed in central Russia. He died in Kriegslazaret 3-619 in Taganrog, and is most likely buried in the unknown soldier section of the Krasnodar Apsheronsk military cemetery. Severin Engelm, born April 8, 1922 in Ries, and fell October 20, 1944. Truda Esser, born Meyer, was born August 11, 1911 in Duisburg, and fell September 26, 1944, during an air raid. Johann van der Essen, born November 15, 1891 in Roermond, and fell October 7, 1944, in an air raid. Johann von Eichels, born October 6, 1923 in Pfalzdorf, and fell April 14, 1945, in Italy. Johann is buried in the Futa Pass Military Cemetery, Block 41, Grave 243. F. Gerhard Fellmann, born January 29, 1914 in Cleve, and fell July 16, 1941. Gerhard was an Unteroffizier in the 10th Company of Infantry Regiment 424 of the 126th Infantry Division. He was killed by a gunshot wound to the chest in Bogovo, near Novgorod, Russia. Johann Fischer, born September 10, 1918 in Neutroden, and fell October 22, 1944, in Italy. Johann was an Obergefreiter and is buried in the Futa Pass Military Cemetery, Block 25, Grave 126. Josef Flintrop, born June 24, 1925 in Matterborn, and fell December 24, 1943, in the East. He was a Jaeger in the 6th Company of Fallschirmjäger Regiment 2. He was killed by a gunshot wound near Novgorodka and is buried in the Kropivnitskia Samofriedhof, Block 14, Row 44, Grave 2352. August Franken, born May 11, 1903 in Matterborn, and fell October 15, 1944 during an air raid. He was a soldier and is buried in the military cemetery in Duisburg Nordfriedhof.